Emily and I are here to give you a preview of Cascadia Rolling Rivers and Rolling Hills. We played Rolling Hills. We haven't played Rolling Rivers, but we've dug into them enough to give you an idea of what they're doing. We've got it set up here on the table. This is a roll and write that gives some Cascadia vibes.
Yes, for sure.
It's going to feel familiar, but it is distinctly a different game.
Yes, it's definitely a roll and write instead, right? So we're rolling dice in each time. There's going to be a shared pool of dice where we can pick from, and we're also going to have 2 of our own personal dice. The fun thing about the shared dice is there are tokens we're going to be collecting, but also there's a fun die that can switch things up, that can mitigate them a little bit, mitigate what you can do. You also have things along the track, nature tokens, that you can use to use your own dice mitigation. So you can kind of be going up or down as we're collecting these different type of wildlife.
Yeah, those nature tokens, like Emily said, they're not actual tokens. You track everything on your sheet. You've got a tally sheet here where you're going to track how many animals you have. And then you've got the main sheet, the habitat here that you're going to be filling out. Now, this is where the game differs quite a bit depending on what sheet you use. Each box comes with an A, B, C, and D, and those are going to be feeling effectively like 4 different roll and writes.
They are very different sheets. So the way that we're filling them out is going to be the same. The base mechanic for everything is going to be the exact same, but the sheet and where we're actually doing with them is going to take you from like a more family weight game, something that's pretty straightforward with what we're doing, to something that's going to be a little more complicated, and then if you really want a brain burner, so you got really like 4 different levels of roll and write here that you could be playing.
Yeah, I would say the family weight sheet is going to feel like most roll and writes, most entry-level roll and writes, where you're doing a thing and you're just checking one box off, pretty easy to track. We used the third one, we used the C.
Yeah.
This one feels a little bit thematically more like Cascadia because you've got this kind of spatial puzzle here where you're drawing lines around and enclosing these hexes as you resolve the cards on the table. But like we said, the base mechanics of what you're doing before you get to your sheet is the same. So what you do, each of the rounds, and there's going to be 20 rounds in the game based on the habitat cards you have here, you roll up the die, you roll your personal die, and then the next thing you do is all the players are going to select, generally speaking, 1 animal from all the die to take, and they get to take all of that animal. So in this case, I have a salmon here, although I could have taken eagles, nothing here, and 2 salmon. I could take, if I really needed elk badly,
2 elk.
I could just take the 2 elk, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 salmon, so I could get 4 salmon. Why am I collecting all these? Because you're going to be resolving these habitat cards, and at the beginning of the game, there's just 1 out. And it kind of serves like a conveyor belt.
Yes.
It starts with this one. This is the habitat that everyone can do. If you have 3 bears, 1 elk, and 2 salmon, you can do this. Now, there are going to be some things you can do to adjust that, but as the game goes on, each round a new card is going to come out, and eventually after the 4th round, that first habitat is going to go away. So you basically work through all 20 of the cards here in this deck for the game.
Right, but if you don't have enough for any of them out there, don't worry, there are some mitigation techniques. Like we said, we have the nature tokens, so you can change what things you're getting, but also at the top, there are blue cards that are going to allow you to change what you need to actually pay.
Yeah.
So for example, we use this one where it says use any. So instead of paying 3 foxes and 3 eagles, I can actually use any animals that I want.
But pay 9.
But pay 9.
Which is not nothing.
Which is not cheap, but if I just happen to have a ton of salmon, but no foxes, no eagles, this is perfect for me because then I can do this and then I get the completion bonus at the bottom. So I'll get to start marking things off on my sheet and I'll get more of those nature tokens. On the other side, we have 2 others that are at the bottom. So these don't help you actually complete the card, but once you've completed it, you get an additional thing. So like this one we had was afterwards you could spend 2 more nature tokens to add an additional one to the habitats that you're marking off on your sheet and getting more points, getting more bonuses.
Yeah, it's really interesting utilizing those cards. And there's a number of those cards in the box. These are just some of them. You take some of them out. You might just get all blue. You might get all of these down here. You're going to get a different combination. And as the cards go down, each of those cards stays put and modifies that card that you're working on. So you might see a card come out here that requires a ton of bears, but you don't have any bears, so you're like, and this one's kind of fun, by the way.
Yeah.
This one has you rolling. You have to say, I'm going to try to complete this, and then you go through this process. This one has you roll one of your personal die, and then you can eliminate that animal that you roll from the cost. So if you roll a bear, you don't have to pay any of those bears. So
Yes.
hopefully you have the other things, and then you can get this completion bonus down here. And if there's a card below it, which there will never be a card above and below, but if there's a card below it, then you can do one of those sort of different things. This last one, in fact, lets you, when you complete this, you go down here, and then it allows you to go ahead and complete another. Now, I can tell you from our experience, that would be
It's a lot.
a challenge. We had a hard time resisting the urge to complete something.
Yes.
And I do think that after now playing it, that this is a game that's tuned to like, you know what, I'm going to hold off and store up some animals. Because, again, these habitat cards move down. So as long as they're out there, you can complete them later. Now, keep in mind, you can only complete one of them each round. But the other reason that you might want to do this, and this is a mini expansion that came in our box, are these summit cards. There's a number of these different summit cards. These are first 2 cards. And most, at least the ones we have out here, they were kind of at odds with completing habitats because they were like, hey, do you have a ton of one animal that you haven't spent for a long time?
You kept hoarding, and you didn't do anything else with it. Then you could get some bonuses.
Yeah, those were, like, I wanted to go after those, but then I was like, well, I can complete this. I'm going to go ahead and complete it.
I think also, though, too, like we said, because there's different sheets, you might be doing different things in the different games you're playing, right? So if you're playing on A, you might be saying, like, oh, I just want to do something each round, and I can only do one thing, so I better do something. Once you get to C, you're like, ooh, I gotta be a little strategic about this. I don't know that I want, even though I could complete something, I don't know that I necessarily want to complete something if it's not as efficient. So there's a lot of that trade-off going on.
Yeah, the further you get into those sheets, the more variables there are. And I mean a lot more variables, just to give you a comparison point. This is the A sheet here. So to give you an example, if you are able to complete this habitat at the end of a round, you're gonna get 3 water hexes. On this sheet, you simply go to the next water hex in this sort of diagonal column here. Say I hadn't done one yet, and I would just simply put a 3 inside that. The end. Now, as you go down here, if I do my next one, there are going to be some bonuses you unlock. If you get a whole row, there's going to be a bonus, but it's pretty straightforward stuff, particularly if you're familiar with a lot of roll and writes. Whereas if you take a look at our sheet, this, instead of just writing the 3, I'm going to take 3 water hexes and sort of enclose them with a dark line around those hexes. Everyone starts from the middle here and then works their way out. Like I said, this is going to feel a little bit more familiar like Cascadia.
Well, like you said, it's a spatial puzzle too.
Yeah.
There are spaces on this one too that you can only get if you encircle all around it.
Yeah.
So you're really thinking about like, which bonuses do I want right now because they're going to give me immediate effects, but which bonuses do I need to take in order to eventually get the bonus I want? There's a lot that's going into it.
And then on top of that, there are even some bonuses that'll send you off in different directions, like more robust roll and writes that you might be familiar with. So like we said at the beginning, it does feel like each of these boxes comes with effectively 4 different roll and writes. Now, I said earlier that we did take a look at Rolling Rivers. There are some differences between the two, and you can have both and kind of play with more players than 4, up to 8, I think.
Yeah.
There are some rules and guidelines for how to do that. These common dice, there are different dice inside the river box. First of all, they're blue, but there's one special of these 3 that gives those sort of like extra weird effects.
Yeah.
It has different effects. So there's those dice, and then the sheets kind of effectively work the same way. The A is very straightforward and looks very much like this sheet, but some of the bonuses and some of the layout is a little bit different. Same thing with the C. The C largely looks like this, but the order of these bonuses that you can get here, here, and here, and then the actual layout of all these different territories is quite different. So it's giving you quite a bit, and the pad, you know, basically the pad in each box comes with X number of each of those.
Sure.
So kind of like 4 roll and writes in one. I guess if you got both, it'd be almost like 8. Maybe
for 8 people at least.
For 8 people anyway. But that is Cascadia Rolling. That's Rolling River and Rolling Hills. There is bound to be more in the Rolling series, but if you have any questions at all about it, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and answer whatever we can. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.